Daniel Carter stood frozen in the gilded ballroom, his worn work boots sinking into plush carpet worth more than his monthly rent. Around him, millionaires in tailored suits whispered and pointed. At the center of it all, Marcus Webb, the man who'd once shoved Daniel's face into cafeteria food, now stood at a microphone, publicly dissecting every failure of Daniel's life while the crowd laughed. But Marcus didn't know what was about to walk through those doors. He didn't know about the snowstorm. He didn't know about the woman Daniel had saved. And he had no idea his carefully planned humiliation was about to backfire in the most spectacular way possible. If you want to see how a single father turns his darkest moment into his greatest victory, stay until the end. And hit that like button. Comment your city below so I can see how far this story travels. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday. Daniel Carter almost missed it entirely, wedged as it was between a past-due electric bill and a grocery store circular advertising chicken thighs for $1.99 a pound. He was standing in his cramped kitchen, still wearing his grease-stained work uniform from Martinez Auto Repair, when his daughter Emma came running in from the mailbox.
"Daddy, you got something fancy."
She held up the envelope like a trophy, her gap-toothed grin wide enough to split her face. Daniel took it from her small hands, his calloused fingers leaving smudges on the heavy cream-colored paper. The return address made his stomach drop. Pinnacle Events Management, Riverside High School 15-year reunion. What is it? Emma climbed onto one of the mismatched kitchen chairs, her legs swinging. Nothing, Bug, just junk mail. That's not junk mail. It's got gold on it. She pointed at the embossed lettering. Daniel turned the envelope over. Sure enough, there was a wax seal. An actual wax seal, pressed with some kind of fancy crest. Who the hell used wax seals anymore? He should throw it away. That would be the smart thing to do. Riverside High was 15 years behind him, and he'd worked hard to keep it there. But Emma was watching him with those curious brown eyes, her mother's eyes, and something made him slide his thumb under the flap. The invitation inside was even more ostentatious than the envelope. Thick cardstock that probably cost more per sheet than Daniel made in an hour. Flowing script announced the reunion would be held at the Grandview Hotel, with cocktails, dinner, and dancing. Black tie requested. Black tie. Daniel owned exactly one tie, and it had a coffee stain on it from a funeral 3 years ago. But it was the handwritten note at the bottom that made Daniel's jaw clench. Carter, heard you're still in town. It would mean a lot to see you there. Let's catch up on old times. Marcus. Who's Marcus? Emma asked, reading upside down. Nobody important. Then why do you look mad? Daniel set the invitation on the counter, face down. I'm not mad. Your eye does that twitchy thing when you're mad. Yeah, since when do you know about my eye twitchy thing? Since forever, Daddy. Emma hopped down from the chair and pulled open the refrigerator. Can I have a juice box? Just one, and don't spill it on your homework this time. She grabbed a juice box and scampered toward the living room, leaving Daniel alone with the invitation and a lifetime of memories he'd rather forget. Marcus Webb. Of course it was Marcus Webb. Daniel could still remember the first time Marcus had cornered him in the high school parking lot freshman year. Daniel had been scrawny back then, all elbows and knees, the kid who wore the same 3 shirts in rotation because his mom worked 2 jobs, and his dad had been gone since he was 6. Marcus, on the other hand, had been everything Daniel wasn't. Athletic, popular, from a family with money that went back generations in their small Midwestern town. Nice shoes, Carter, Marcus had said, loud enough for the crowd to hear. What'd you do? Fish those out of a dumpster? They weren't from a dumpster. They were from Goodwill, which Daniel's mom had driven 40 minutes to reach because the local thrift store didn't have his size. But the crowd had laughed anyway, and Marcus had smiled like he'd just won something. That was the beginning. 4 years of casual cruelty, death by 1,000 small cuts, tripping Daniel in the hallway, accidentally spilling drinks on him in the cafeteria, starting rumors about his family. Nothing big enough to get expelled over, but everything designed to remind Daniel exactly where he stood in the Riverside High hierarchy. And Daniel had taken it. What else could he do? Fight back and give Marcus a real reason to destroy him? Tell a teacher and become an even bigger target? So he'd kept his head down, graduated by the skin of his teeth, and left Riverside High in his rearview mirror the day he turned 18. He'd never planned to go back. Daddy? Emma's voice floated in from the living room. Can you help me with my math? Daniel crumpled the invitation and tossed it toward the trash can. It bounced off the rim and landed on the floor. He left it there. 3 days later, Daniel was elbow deep in a transmission rebuild when Carlos Martinez stuck his head into the garage bay. "Carter, got a minute?" Daniel straightened up, wincing as his lower back protested. 32 wasn't supposed to feel this old, but 12 years of crawling under cars had a way of aging a person. "What's up, boss?" Carlos jerked his thumb toward the office. "Need to talk to you about hours." "Okay." That was never a good sign. Daniel followed Carlos into the cramped office that smelled like motor oil and the cheap air freshener Carlos's wife bought in bulk. Carlos sat down behind his desk, which was buried under invoices and parts catalogs, and gestured for Daniel to take the folding chair across from him. "We're slow," Carlos said without preamble. "Slower than usual for this time of year." Daniel's stomach tightened. "How slow?" "Ish sate. Slow enough that I'm going to have to cut everyone back to 4 days a week. Just temporary, until things pick up." 4 days. That was 20% of Daniel's paycheck gone. That was 20,000. 20% of groceries, 20% of Emma's school supplies, 20% of the rent on their apartment that was already too small and too expensive. "When does this start?" Daniel asked. "Next week." Carlos looked genuinely apologetic. "I'm sorry, man. If I had any other choice, I know it's fine." Well, it wasn't fine, but what was Daniel supposed to say? Carlos had given him a job when nobody else would, had let him work flexible hours when Emma was sick, had advanced him pay more than once when things got tight. Carlos was doing the best he could. Daniel stood up. "I should get back to that transmission." "Hey." Carlos stopped him at the door. "You're my best mechanic, you know that? When things turn around, you'll be the first one back to full time." Daniel nodded and headed back to the garage. He believed Carlos meant it. He also knew that when you were living paycheck to paycheck, when things turn around might as well be when pigs fly. He was torquing down the last bolt on the transmission when his phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Chen, Emma's after-school babysitter. "Emma's asking if she can stay for dinner. I'm making dumplings. No charge. She's good company for me." Daniel smiled despite the knot in his stomach. Mrs. Chen was a widow in her 70s who lived in the apartment below theirs. She'd adopted Emma as a surrogate granddaughter, and the feeling was mutual. That would be great. "Thanks, Mrs. Chen." With Emma taken care of for the evening, Daniel finished up the transmission, clocked out, and headed home. The apartment was quiet without Emma's constant chatter, and Daniel found himself standing in the kitchen, staring at the crumpled invitation still on the floor where it had landed 3 days ago. He picked it up and smoothed it out on the counter. "Let's catch up on old times." What a load of garbage. Marcus didn't want to catch up. Marcus wanted to see how far Daniel had fallen, wanted to parade him in front of all their former classmates as proof that the pecking order from high school had been the correct one all along. Daniel should throw the invitation away. Instead, he found himself Googling Marcus Webb Riverside. The results filled his screen immediately. Apparently, Marcus had done well for himself. Very well. He was the CEO of Webb Industries, a manufacturing company his grandfather had founded. The company had nearly gone bankrupt 15 years ago, but under Marcus's leadership, it had turned around and was now worth hundreds of millions. There were photos of Marcus cutting ribbons at factory openings, shaking hands with senators, accepting business awards. In every photo, Marcus was smiling that same smile from high school. The smile that said he'd won. Daniel closed his laptop harder than necessary. Bulltiter. That night, after Mrs. Chen brought Emma home full of dumplings and stories, Daniel sat on the edge of Emma's bed while she showed him her latest drawing. It was supposed to be the two of them at the park, though Daniel's arms were about 3 times longer than they should be, and Emma had given herself purple hair. "That's beautiful, Bug," Daniel said. "It's for the art show at school. Mrs. Patterson says we're supposed to draw our family doing something fun." Emma tilted her head, studying her work. "Do you think Mommy would like it?" The question hit Daniel in the chest like it always did. Emma had been 3 when Sarah died. Car accident, black ice, gone in an instant. Some days it felt like yesterday. Other days it felt like a lifetime ago. "I think she would love it," Daniel said carefully. "She always thought you were the best artist in the whole world." Even better than you? Especially better than me. You remember that time I tried to draw you a birthday card? Emma giggled. It looked like a potato with eyes. It was supposed to be a bunny. It was a really weird bunny, Daddy. They laughed together, and for a moment everything else fell away. The bills on the counter, the reduced hours at work, the invitation from Marcus Webb, none of it mattered. This was what mattered. This kid with her gap-toothed grin and her terrible purple-haired drawings. Daddy? Emma's voice got quiet. Are you scared of stuff sometimes? Daniel set the drawing aside. Sure. Everybody gets scared sometimes. Why? There's this girl at school, Madison. She's really mean. She said my shoes are ugly and my lunch smells weird. Daniel felt his jaw clench. So it started this young. What did you do? I didn't do anything. I just walked away, but Emma picked at a loose thread on her comforter. I wanted to say something back. Something mean. But I was scared. Scared of what? I don't know. Scared she'd get meaner, I guess. Or that other kids would laugh at me. Daniel pulled Emma into a hug, breathing in the strawberry scent of her shampoo. Listen to me, Bug. Walking away doesn't make you scared. It makes you smart. But you know what else? What? Sometimes, when someone keeps being mean, you have to stand up. Not to be mean back, but to show them you're not going to let them make you feel small. Does that make sense? Emma nodded against his chest. I think so. But what if I stand up and nothing changes? Then at least you know you tried. At least you know you didn't let fear make your choices for you. Emma pulled back and looked at him with those two wise eyes. Is there something you're scared of, Daddy? The invitation flashed through Daniel's mind. Maybe, yeah. Are you going to stand up to it? Daniel smoothed Emma's hair back from her forehead. I'm thinking about it. I think you should. Emma yawned. You always tell me to be brave. You're right, I do. So you should be brave too. When did you get so smart? I was always smart. You just didn't notice. Daniel tucked Emma in, kissed her forehead, and turned out the light. But her words followed him out of the bedroom and back to the kitchen, where the invitation still lay on the counter. You should be brave too. He picked up the invitation again. The Grand View Hotel, black tie. Next Saturday at 7. Daniel had exactly $347 in his checking account. Emma needed new shoes. Her toes were starting to poke through her current ones. The electricity bill was due in 5 days. Rent was due in 12. He couldn't afford to go to this reunion. Not financially, and probably not emotionally either. But Emma's voice echoed in his head. I think you should. Before he could talk himself out of it, Daniel pulled out his phone and found the RSVP email address at the bottom of the invitation. His thumbs hovered over the keyboard. This was stupid. This was exactly what Marcus wanted. Daniel showing up to be humiliated all over again. But it was also 15 years later. Daniel wasn't the same scared kid anymore. He'd survived things Marcus couldn't imagine. He'd held his wife's hand while she took her last breath. He'd learned to braid hair and pack school lunches and show up at parent-teacher conferences as the only dad in a room full of moms. He'd kept himself and his daughter afloat through medical bills and broken-down cars, and nights when he'd had to choose between paying for groceries and paying for heat. Marcus Webb didn't know the first thing about real strength. Daniel's thumbs moved across the screen. I'll be there. Daniel Carter. He hit send before he could change his mind. The next morning, Daniel woke up regretting everything. What was he thinking? He didn't have money for a tux rental. He didn't have money for a gift, which the invitation had mentioned would be collected for the reunion's charity of choice. He definitely didn't have money for drinks at the Grandview Hotel bar, where a beer probably cost more than his lunch. But he'd sent the RSVP, and Daniel Carter might be a lot of things. But he wasn't someone who went back on his word. He was running through worst-case scenarios in his head when Emma appeared in the kitchen doorway, already dressed for school in mismatched socks and a shirt with a juice stain on the collar. You're thinking too loud, she announced. It woke me up. Sorry, Bug, want some cereal? Can I have the one with the marshmallows? That's dessert, not breakfast. But it has vitamins. So does an apple. Emma wrinkled her nose, but accepted the bowl of generic cornflakes Daniel poured for her. She ate in silence for a minute before saying, "Did you stand up to your scary thing?" Daniel paused in the middle of packing her lunch. "What?" "Last night. You said you were thinking about standing up to something scary. Did you do it?" Yeah, I did." "Good." Emma crunched another spoonful of cereal. "Madison said my drawing was stupid yesterday. So I told her that her opinion was stupid, and my art is awesome." "Emma, but I said it nice." "I smiled when I said it. Mrs. Patterson says you can say anything if you smile." Daniel wasn't sure that was the lesson Mrs. Patterson had been trying to teach, but he let it go. "What did Madison say?" She looked surprised. Then she walked away. "So I guess I won." "I'm proud of you, Bug." "Thanks. I'm proud of you too, even though I don't know what your scary thing is." Daniel finished packing her lunch, a peanut butter sandwich, an apple, a handful of pretzels, and a juice box. "It's a party with some people I used to know." "Why is that scary?" "Because they weren't very nice to me when we were in school together." Emma considered this. "Are they still mean?" "I don't know. Maybe." "Then why are you going?" It was a good question. Daniel had asked himself the same thing about 100 times since hitting send on that email. "Because I want to show them I'm not scared anymore," he said finally. "Does that make sense?" Emma nodded seriously. "That makes sense. You should wear your nice shirt." "I'll think about it." "The blue one. It makes your eyes look pretty." "Guys don't have pretty eyes." "You do, though." Daniel dropped Emma off at school, drove to work, and spent the day with his head under the hood of a Ford F-150. Around lunchtime, Carlos appeared in the bay again. "Hey, Carter, you got plans Saturday night?" Daniel straightened up. "Why?" "My nephew's getting married. I'm short of Valet Parker, and it pays cash. $150 for 4 hours. You interested?" $150 would cover the electricity bill with enough left over for Emma's shoes. But Saturday night was the reunion. "I can't," Daniel said. "I've got something." Carlos raised an eyebrow. "Must be important if you're turning down cash." Yeah, it's important." "Fair enough. Let me know if your plans fall through." Daniel went back to the truck, but his mind was elsewhere. $150. That was real money. Money he needed. What was he doing? Turning it down for some high school reunion where he'd probably just end up feeling like garbage about himself? But then he thought about Emma telling off Madison with a smile. About the question she'd asked him. "Did you stand up to your scary thing?" Daniel had told his daughter to be brave. Now he had to follow his own advice. Focus. Saturday arrived faster than Daniel wanted it to. He'd managed to track down a suit at a consignment shop downtown. Navy blue, slightly too big in the shoulders, but clean and presentable. $25. The woman at the counter had thrown in a tie for free when he'd mentioned it was for a reunion. "Good luck, honey," she'd said. "Show him what you're made of." Daniel wasn't sure what he was made of, but he was about to find out. He showered, shaved, and put on the suit while Emma sat on the closed toilet lid, critiquing his tie-tying technique. "It's crooked," she said. "It's not crooked. It's definitely crooked. Mrs. Chen's grandson knows how to tie ties. You should have asked him." "Mrs. Chen's grandson is 40 years old and works at a bank. I think I can handle my own tie." Daniel finally got the knot to sit right and turned to face Emma. "Well, how do I look?" Emma tilted her head, considering. "You look nervous." "That's not what I asked." "But you do. Your face is all tight." "My face is not tight." "Is too. But you also look handsome. Like a movie dad." "A movie dad?" "Yeah, like the dads in movies who have to go to important meetings and stuff." Daniel ruffled her hair. "Thanks, Bug." Mrs. Chen had agreed to watch Emma for the evening, and she appeared at the door right on time, carrying a container of cookies and wearing her usual knowing smile. "You look very sharp, Daniel," she said. "Thank you, Mrs. Chen." "This is the reunion?" "Yeah." "The one with the people who weren't nice to you?" Daniel shot Emma a look. How does she know about that? I tell Mrs. Chen everything, Emma said matter-of-factly. She's my best friend. Mrs. Chen patted Daniel's arm. You hold your head up tonight. Those people don't know what you've been through. They don't know how strong you are. I'm not that strong. You're raising this brilliant girl all by yourself. You get up every day and go to work and make sure she has everything she needs. That's stronger than any fancy job or big house. Mrs. Chen squeezed his arm. You remember that. Daniel's throat felt tight. Thank you. Now go, and don't worry about Emma. We're going to bake cookies and watch that movie about the talking fish. Again? Daniel asked. It's a good movie, Emma protested. Daniel kissed Emma's forehead, grabbed his keys, and headed for the door. His car, a 15-year-old Honda Civic with a questionable transmission and a crack in the windshield, was waiting in the parking lot. Not exactly reunion transportation, but it would have to do. The drive to the Grandview Hotel took 20 minutes. Daniel spent the entire time trying to talk himself out of turning around. What was he going to say to these people? What did they even have in common anymore? But he kept driving. The Grandview loomed ahead, all glass and steel and valet parking. Daniel bypassed the valet. No way was he handing his keys to some kid who'd judge him for his car, and found a spot in the public parking garage 2 blocks away. He sat in the car for 5 minutes, working up the nerve to get out. His phone buzzed. A text from Emma. You can do it, Daddy. Remember, you're brave. Despite everything, Daniel smiled. When had his 7-year-old become the wise one? He got out of the car, straightened his too big suit jacket, and started walking toward the Grandview. The lobby was full of people in expensive clothes, laughing and hugging and exclaiming over how long it had been. Daniel recognized a few faces, older, more polished, but fundamentally the same people they'd been in high school. A table near the entrance had name tags arranged alphabetically. Daniel found his and clipped it to his jacket. The name tag was simple white with black text. Daniel Carter, class of 2011. Daniel Carter, a woman's voice said behind him. Is that really you? Daniel turned to find Jennifer Morrison, Jennifer Albright back then, smiling at him. She'd been in his English class junior year. Not part of Marcus's crowd, but not exactly friendly to Daniel either. Hi, Jennifer. Oh my gosh, I almost didn't recognize you. You look... She trailed off, her eyes taking in his suit, his shoes, his general state of being. Different? Daniel supplied. Grown up, she said brightly. Too brightly. What have you been up to? Working, raising my daughter. You have a daughter. That's wonderful. And what do you do for work? I'm a mechanic. Oh. Jennifer's smile flickered. That's nice. Honest work. It pays the bills. Of course. Of course. Well, it's great to see you. I should go find my husband. He's around here somewhere. She touched Daniel's arm briefly and disappeared into the crowd. Daniel exhaled. One conversation down. Only an entire evening to go. He made his way toward the ballroom, where cocktails were apparently being served. The room was everything the invitation had promised. Crystal chandeliers, white tablecloths, a bar that stretched the length of one wall. A string quartet played something classical in the corner. Daniel felt wildly out of place. He was debating whether he could slip out without anyone noticing when a hand clapped down on his shoulder. Carter, you actually came! Daniel didn't need to turn around to know who it was. Marcus Webb's voice hadn't changed. Still loud, still confident, still carrying that undercurrent of amusement at the world's expense. Daniel turned. Marcus looked exactly like his photos online. Tall, fit, expensive suit that actually fit him properly. His hair was graying at the temples in a way that somehow made him look more distinguished. He was flanked by 2 guys Daniel vaguely recognized from the football team. Marcus, Daniel said evenly, man, it's good to see you. When I saw you'd RSVP'd, I couldn't believe it. Didn't think you'd actually show. Marcus's smile was wide, friendly even, but his eyes were calculating. What have you been up to? Last I heard you were working at, where was it? Martinez Auto Repair. Right, mechanic work. That's great, really great. Honest living, you know? Marcus sounded exactly like Jennifer had, which meant he was about to make it sound like anything but great. You still in town? Yeah. Never felt the urge to get out, see the world? I've seen enough. That's one way to look at it. Marcus gestured to the bar. Come on, let me buy you a drink. We should catch up properly. Daniel knew this game. He'd played it all through high school. Marcus would buy him a drink, ask him questions designed to highlight everything Daniel didn't have, and slowly gather an audience for the show. But Daniel had come here for a reason. So he followed Marcus to the bar. 2 scotches, Marcus told the bartender. The Macallan 18. The bartender poured 2 glasses and slid them across the bar. Marcus handed one to Daniel. To old times, Marcus said, raising his glass. Daniel didn't drink. What do you want, Marcus? Want? I don't want anything. I'm just glad you came. It's good to see where everyone ended up, you know. Makes you appreciate how far you've come. Marcus took a sip of his scotch. So, mechanic. That's a solid job, recession-proof. It pays the bills. I bet. You married? Kids? I have a daughter, 7 years old. That's great. Really great. Her mom around? She died 4 years ago. For just a second, something that might have been genuine surprise crossed Marcus's face, but it was gone as quickly as it came, replaced by practiced sympathy. Man, I'm sorry to hear that. That must be tough, raising a kid on your own. We manage. Ami se. I'm sure you do. You always were a survivor, Carter. Marcus paused. Actually, you know what? We should do this right. Really catch up. Why don't you come up to the stage for a minute? I'm supposed to say a few words as reunion chair, and I'd love to get your perspective. You know, hear what life's been like for everyone, not just the success stories. There it was. Daniel had known it was coming, but hearing it stated so plainly still made his stomach drop. He could say no. He could walk out right now, go home to Emma, and forget this whole stupid night. But Emma's text echoed in his head. You're brave. Sure, Daniel heard himself say. Why not? Marcus's smile widened. Fantastic. This is going to be great. Marcus didn't waste time. He headed straight for the small stage at the front of the ballroom, motioning for Daniel to follow. The string quartet wrapped up their current piece, and the murmur of conversation began to fade as people noticed Marcus climbing the steps. Daniel's feet felt heavy. Each step toward that stage felt like walking toward an execution. But he kept moving because stopping now would be worse. Stopping now would prove every terrible thing Marcus had ever thought about him. The stage wasn't large, just a raised platform with a microphone stand and a podium bearing the Riverside High crest. But from up here, Daniel could see the entire ballroom. At least 200 people, maybe more. Former classmates in designer clothes holding drinks that cost more than Daniel's grocery budget. The lights were bright enough to make him squint. Marcus took the microphone with the ease of someone who'd given 1,000 speeches. Can I have everyone's attention? Everyone? Great, thank you. He waited until the room fell silent. First of all, I want to thank you all for coming tonight. It means the world to see so many familiar faces. 15 years, can you believe it? Seems like just yesterday we were walking those halls, worried about pop quizzes and prom dates. Polite laughter rippled through the crowd. Now, I know we've all taken different paths since graduation. Some of us went into business, some into medicine, some into tech. We've got lawyers and entrepreneurs and even a couple of artists, if I'm not mistaken. But I thought it would be meaningful to hear from someone whose journey has been different. Someone who reminds us that success isn't just about money or titles. Marcus turned to Daniel, gesturing him forward. Daniel Carter, everyone. Come on up, Daniel. Applause. Tentative, curious applause. Daniel stepped to the microphone. Up close, he could see individual faces in the crowd. Jennifer Morrison standing with a tall man who must be her husband. Brett Kozlowski from chemistry class. Amy Chen, who'd been valedictorian. Sarah Brennan, who'd once told Daniel his jeans looked like they came from a homeless shelter. Hi, Daniel said. His voice came out rougher than he'd intended. I'm Daniel Carter. Most of you probably don't remember me. Oh, we remember you. Marcus cut in, his tone friendly. Daniel was the quiet guy, kept to himself mostly. But I always thought you were interesting, Carter. You had this quality, you know, this resilience. Marcus turned back to the crowd. Daniel's a mechanic now, works at a local shop, and he's raising his daughter as a single dad, which I think deserves some recognition. More applause. It sounded sympathetic this time. Pitying. Daniel's hands clenched at his sides. Tell us about that, Daniel, Marcus said. What's it like being a single father? Must be challenging on a mechanic's salary. There it was, the knife, slipped in smooth and clean. It's fine, as Daniel said. We make it work. I'm sure you do. Kids are expensive, though, aren't they? I wouldn't know personally. My fiancé and I are waiting until we're really established. But I've heard the numbers. Childcare alone must be brutal. I manage. Of course you do. You always were good at managing, weren't you? I remember in high school you had that one shirt, the red one with the logo. You wore it like twice a week. I always admired that, not caring what people thought. The crowd shifted uncomfortably. A few people looked away, but most kept watching, the way people watched car accidents. Daniel's jaw tightened. I didn't have a lot of options back then. Some busts. Right. Tough home situation, if I remember correctly. Your dad left when you were young? 6 years old. That's rough. Really rough. And your mom, she worked a lot, didn't she? Cleaning houses or something? She worked 2 jobs to keep a roof over our heads. That's admirable. Really admirable. It's just, I was thinking about this earlier, actually, about how some people get dealt a bad hand and they never quite recover from it, you know? Like, the statistics on kids from broken homes, kids who grow up in poverty, the numbers aren't great. Most of them end up repeating the cycle. Marcus paused as if thinking. You ever worry about that? About your daughter ending up in the same situation you were in? Is she? The room had gone completely silent. Even the bartenders had stopped moving. Daniel felt something hot and sharp building in his chest. This was what Marcus had wanted all along. Not a reunion, not a conversation. Public execution. Proof that the scared kid from high school was still scared, still struggling, still exactly where Marcus had always believed he belonged. My daughter is nothing like I was, Daniel said quietly. She's smarter, braver, and kinder than I could ever be, and she's going to have every opportunity I can give her. I'm sure she will. I'm sure you're doing your best. It's just hard, isn't it, when you're limited by circumstances, by choices. Marcus's smile never wavered. I mean, look at where we all are now. Some of us took risks, pushed ourselves, built something real. And some of us, well, we settled for what felt safe, what felt manageable. No judgment either way. Everyone's got to do what works for them. Kiki. Someone in the crowd coughed. Daniel saw Amy Chen looking at her shoes. Brett Kozlowski was staring at Marcus with something that might have been discomfort, but Marcus wasn't done. Actually, you know what? I think this is important. I think we need to talk about this honestly, because here's the thing. And Daniel, I say this with respect, but you're a perfect example of what happens when people don't push themselves, when they accept limitation as destiny. Marcus addressed the crowd now, using Daniel as a prop. 15 years ago, Daniel could have been anything. Could have gone to college, could have learned a trade, could have taken a risk on something. But he didn't. He stayed small. And now look, he's 32 years old, working the same kind of job he could have gotten at 18, raising a kid alone, barely scraping by. That's not a success story. That's a cautionary tale. The words landed like punches. Daniel felt each one, felt the weight of 200 pairs of eyes on him, felt the judgment and the pity and the uncomfortable relief of people grateful they weren't him. This was the moment Marcus had been building to, the kill shot. Daniel should walk off this stage, should leave with whatever dignity he had left. But then he thought about Emma asking why Madison scared her, thought about his own answer. Sometimes you have to stand up, not to be mean back, but to show them you're not going to let them make you feel small. Daniel stepped closer to the microphone. You're right, he said. Marcus blinked. What? You're right about a lot of that. I didn't go to college. I didn't take big risks or build an empire. I work with my hands for wages that'll never make me rich. Daniel's voice was steady now, calm. But you know what I did do, Marcus? I showed up. Every single day for the past 15 years, I showed up. I showed up when my wife was dying and the medical bills were piling up faster than I could count them. I showed up when my 3-year-old daughter asked me why mommy wasn't coming home, and I had to explain death to someone who still believed in Santa Claus. I showed up at 2 in the morning when she had nightmares, and at 6 in the morning when I had to get her ready for preschool before my shift started. I showed up to every parent-teacher conference, every school play, every scraped knee and bad dream and hard question. The room was absolutely still. You want to talk about choices? Daniel continued. Fine, let's talk about choices. I chose my daughter over everything else. I chose being there for her over climbing ladders or making connections or building a resume. I chose fixing cars because the hours were flexible and my boss let me leave when the school called. I chose a small apartment in a safe neighborhood over a nicer place in a cheaper area. I chose stability over risk because risk meant maybe not being able to afford food, and I wasn't going to let my kid go hungry to chase some dream. Marcus's smile had frozen on his face. And you know what else? Daniel said. Those choices? I'd make them again. Every single one. Because at the end of the day, my daughter knows she's loved. She knows she matters. She knows that when things get hard, I'm not going anywhere. Can you say the same about the people in your life, Marcus? All those employees and business partners and politicians you shake hands with, do any of them know you'd actually show up for them when it mattered? Or are they just rungs on your ladder? Someone in the crowd made a sound that might have been a suppressed laugh. Marcus's face had gone red. I was trying to make a point about how I'm not successful because I don't have what you have. I know. I got it. Daniel looked out at the crowd. But here's what I learned in the past 15 years. Success isn't about the size of your bank account or the title on your business card. It's about who you are when nobody's watching. It's about whether you can sleep at night knowing you did right by the people who depend on you. And by that measure, Marcus, I'm doing just fine. The silence broke. Someone started clapping, slow, deliberate claps from the back of the room. Then someone else joined in. And someone else. Within seconds, half the room was applauding. Marcus stood there, his microphone still in hand, his carefully planned humiliation turning to ash in front of him. Well, Marcus said, his voice tight, that's certainly one perspective. I think we can all agree that fatherhood is important, even if some of us choose to build a foundation before. Give it a rest, Webb. The voice came from near the bar. Brett Kozlowski, holding a beer and looking at Marcus with open disgust. We all know what you were trying to do up there. It's the same crap you pulled in high school, and honestly, it's pathetic. A murmur ran through the crowd. Marcus's red face went darker. I don't know what you think you saw, Marcus started. We all saw it. This from Amy Chen. You dragged him up there to embarrass him. It was obvious. I was making a point about different life trajectories. You were being a dick, Brett said flatly. Same as you always were. The crowd's energy had shifted completely. People were nodding, whispering to each other. Marcus was losing control of the room, and he knew it. You know what? Marcus said, his voice sharp now. I don't have to stand here and be lectured about my character by people who... The ballroom doors opened. Later, Daniel would try to remember the exact sequence of events, the way the doors swung wide, the way the conversations died mid-sentence, the way everyone in the room turned to look. A woman stood in the doorway. She was tall, maybe 5'10", with dark hair pulled back in a way that was somehow both severe and elegant. She wore a black dress that probably cost more than Daniel's car, and she carried herself like someone who owned every room she walked into. But it was her face that made Daniel's breath stop. He knew that face. The room seemed to tilt sideways. I'm sorry I'm late, the woman said, her voice carrying across the silent ballroom. I hope I haven't missed anything important. She started walking toward the stage. Her heels clicked on the marble floor. Every eye in the room followed her. Daniel's mind was racing, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. It couldn't be her. It had been 15 years. He'd left her in a coffee shop parking lot during the worst snowstorm in recorded state history. Had made sure she was breathing and warm before he disappeared into the night, because he couldn't afford the ambulance fees and couldn't risk the questions. But it was her. Older, polished, transformed, but unmistakably her. She reached the stage and looked up at him. Hello, Daniel. Victoria? The name came out as barely a whisper. She smiled. You remember. Of course he remembered. You didn't forget the night you saved someone's life. Marcus had recovered from his shock and was stepping forward, his salesman's smile back in place. I'm sorry, miss, but this is a private event. If you're looking for the Harrison wedding, that's in the grand ballroom on the 3rd. Princess, I'm not looking for the Harrison wedding. Victoria didn't even glance at Marcus. Her eyes stayed locked on Daniel. I'm looking for Daniel Carter, and I believe I've found him. How do you know? Marcus started. My name is Victoria Hale, she said, finally turning to address the room. Some of you may have heard of me. I'm the CEO of Hale Consolidated. We're a venture capital firm based in New York. We manage approximately $8 billion in assets. The room erupted in whispers. Even Daniel recognized the name Hale Consolidated. They'd been in the news recently for a massive tech acquisition. What does that have to do with... Marcus tried again. 15 years ago, Victoria said, cutting him off. I was a 20-year-old college dropout with $40 to my name and nowhere to go. I'd left home with nothing but a backpack and a half tank of gas, trying to get to my aunt's house 3 states away. And I almost died doing it. She walked up the steps to the stage, moving to stand beside Daniel. It was January 12th. A blizzard had shut down the highways. My car broke down on a rural road with no cell service and the temperature dropping below 0. I was hypothermic, disoriented, and about 20 minutes from freezing to death. Victoria's voice was steady, but Daniel could hear the emotion beneath it. And then a truck pulled over. A beat-up pickup with a busted taillight and rust on the wheel wells. The driver was maybe 17 years old, wearing a coat that was too thin for the weather, but he stopped anyway. Daniel's hands were shaking. He remembered that night. Remembered the broken-down sedan on the shoulder, the girl slumped over the steering wheel, the way her lips had been blue. He got me into his truck, Victoria continued, wrapped me in his jacket, even though he was shivering himself, drove me to a coffee shop and bought me hot chocolate with what I'm pretty sure was the last $5 he had. He sat with me until I could feel my fingers again. And then, when I was safe and warm, and the storm was starting to clear, he left. He wouldn't tell me his full name, wouldn't let me repay him. He just said he was glad I was okay, and then he was gone. Bon. The ballroom was silent except for Victoria's voice. I spent years trying to find him. Put out ads, hired investigators, followed up on every lead. Nothing. It was like he'd vanished. Victoria turned to Daniel. But I never forgot his face. And I never forgot what he taught me that night. What did he teach you? Someone in the crowd asked. Victoria smiled. That there are people in this world who help others not because they want something in return, but because it's the right thing to do. That kindness doesn't require wealth or status. That the measure of a person isn't what they have, it's what they do when no one's watching. She looked at Marcus for the first time. I built my entire company on that principle. Every investment we make, every business we back, every partnership we form. I ask myself what Daniel Carter would do. Would he see the person behind the pitch? Would he value character over credentials? Would he give someone a chance even if they didn't fit the conventional mold? Victoria's voice hardened. So when I got a notification that someone named Daniel Carter had RSVP'd to a reunion at the Grandview Hotel, the same hotel where my company is hosting a charity gala on the same night, I had to come see if it was really him. Had to know if the boy who saved my life was the same man I'd been searching for. Marcus looked like he'd been punched. I didn't know. No, you didn't. You were too busy humiliating a good man to realize what was happening right in front of you. Victoria's gaze swept across the room. I heard the last 5 minutes of your little speech, Mr. Webb, and I have to say, I've met a lot of small, petty people in my career. But you might be the smallest. Someone in the crowd laughed, a quick, startled bark of sound. Marcus's face went from red to purple. Now wait just a minute. I don't think I will. Victoria turned back to Daniel. I know this is sudden and probably overwhelming, but I came here tonight for 2 reasons. First, to say thank you. 15 years late, but thank you. You saved my life, and I never got to tell you what that meant to me. But you don't have to thank me, Daniel said quietly. Anyone would have done the same thing. No, they wouldn't have. Most people would have driven past, assumed someone else would help, protected themselves from the inconvenience or the risk. Victoria's eyes were bright. But you didn't, and that matters. You said there were 2 reasons, Daniel managed. The second reason is professional. I want to offer you a job. The room exploded. Everyone started talking at once. Daniel heard his name, heard Victoria's name, heard speculation and shock and disbelief all tangled together. A job? Daniel repeated stupidly. Director of Operations for our Midwest division. We're opening a new office here in the state, and I need someone to run it. Someone who understands what it means to work hard, to show up, to value people over profit. Someone with real-world experience, not just an MBA and a trust fund. But Victoria pulled a business card from somewhere. Daniel had no idea where she'd been keeping it in that dress, and handed it to him. The salary is $240,000 a year, plus benefits, plus equity. You'd have autonomy to build the team and set the culture. And before you ask, yes, I'm serious. I don't make offers I don't mean. Daniel stared at the card. The numbers didn't make sense. $240,000. That was more than 5 times what he made at the auto shop. That was Emma's college fund. That was never worrying about electricity bills or which bills to pay first. That was impossible. I don't have a college degree, he said. I don't care. I don't know anything about venture capital. You'll learn. I did. Victoria smiled. What you do have is something I can't teach. Integrity, judgment, the ability to see people for who they really are, not just what they can offer you. That's worth more than any degree. I have a daughter. I can't work 80-hour weeks. Then don't. Set your own hours. Bring her to the office if you need to. I'm not interested in burning you out. I'm interested in what you can build when you're given the right resources and support. But Victoria paused. I understand if you need time to think about it. This is a big decision. But Daniel, I mean this. I've been looking for you for 15 years. I'm not going to let you slip away again. What? Papa must be Daniel looked down at the business card in his hand. Looked out at the crowd. Marcus's face frozen in shock. Brett grinning like a maniac. Amy Chen wiping her eyes. Jennifer Morrison staring open-mouthed. This couldn't be real. Things like this didn't happen to people like him. But the card was solid in his hand. Victoria was standing right there, watching him with those intense eyes. And somewhere in the back of his mind, he could hear Emma's voice. You should be brave too. I don't know what to say, Daniel admitted. Say you'll think about it. That's all I ask. Victoria glanced at her watch. I need to get back to my gala. My guests are probably wondering where I disappeared to. But I want to hear from you, Daniel, soon, before the end of the week. She started to walk away, then paused and turned back to Marcus. One more thing, Mr. Webb. I looked up Webb Industries before I came here tonight. You've done well for yourself. Impressive revenue growth, good market positioning. You should be proud. Marcus perked up slightly. Thank you. We've worked hard to, which is why it's going to be especially unfortunate when Hale Consolidated declines to invest in your next expansion round. I saw the pitch that came across my desk last month. We were seriously considering it. But after tonight? Victoria's smile was ice. I don't think our values align. Good luck finding other investors who haven't heard about what happened here. Marcus went pale. You can't do that because of some personal... I can do whatever I want with my company's money. And I choose not to invest in people who treat others as beneath them. Enjoy the rest of your reunion, Mr. Webb. Something tells me it won't be as memorable as you'd planned. Victoria walked off the stage and out of the ballroom, leaving absolute chaos in her wake. Daniel stood there, still holding the business card, still trying to process what had just happened. Around him, people were shouting questions, pulling out phones, crowding toward the stage. Marcus was still standing there, frozen, his whole carefully constructed night crumbling around him. Brett Kozlowski pushed through the crowd and clapped Daniel on the shoulder. Holy shit, Carter. That was incredible. I didn't do anything, Daniel said numbly. Are you kidding? You stood up to Webb. Some billionaire just offered you a dream job and the whole room saw Webb get what he deserved. That's not nothing. Amy Chen appeared on Daniel's other side. Is it true? Did you really save her life? I just gave her a ride and some hot chocolate. It wasn't that big a deal. It was to her, apparently. Amy was smiling. I always knew you were a good person, Daniel. I'm sorry I never said it back then. More people were pressing forward now, wanting to shake Daniel's hand, asking about the job, apologizing for things they'd done or failed to do 15 years ago. It was overwhelming. It was surreal. It was everything Daniel had never wanted and never expected. He needed air. Daniel pushed through the crowd, mumbling excuses, and made his way to the hotel's outdoor terrace. The night air was cool and quiet after the chaos of the ballroom. He leaned against the railing and looked at Victoria's business card again. Victoria Hale, CEO, Hale Consolidated. Cell 212-555-0147. Email vshale@haleconsolidated.com. His phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Chen. Emma wants to know if you're having fun. Daniel smiled despite everything and texted back, It's been interesting. Tell her I'll be home soon. Another text came through almost immediately, this one from a number he didn't recognize. This is Victoria. I hope you don't mind. I got your number from the reunion contact list. I meant what I said tonight. Call me when you're ready to talk. No pressure. Well, maybe a little pressure. I really do want you on my team. Daniel stared at the message, then at the business card, then back at the message. What the hell was he supposed to do with this? Daniel drove home in a daze, Victoria's business card burning a hole in his jacket pocket. The streets were empty at this hour, just him and the occasional traffic light turning from red to green for nobody. His hands gripped the steering wheel tight enough to make his knuckles ache. $240,000 a year. The number kept bouncing around in his head, refusing to settle into something that made sense. He'd never known anyone who made that kind of money, never imagined he'd be offered it himself. The apartment was quiet when he let himself in. Mrs. Chen was asleep on the couch, her reading glasses crooked on her face, a book open on her lap. Emma was presumably in bed. Daniel stood there for a moment, just looking at Mrs. Chen's peaceful face, at the small apartment with its scratched floors and water-stained ceiling, at the life he'd built here. Mrs. Chen stirred and blinked at him. Daniel? What time is it? Almost 11. I'm sorry I'm late. No, it's fine. She sat up, straightening her glasses. How was it? Daniel didn't know how to answer that. It was complicated. Mrs. Chen studied his face. You look like someone who's just had their world turned upside down. That's pretty accurate. Good upside down or bad upside down? I honestly don't know yet. What? Mrs. Chen patted his hand and gathered her things. Well, whatever it is, you'll figure it out. You always do. Emma's asleep, by the way. She tried to stay up, but the cookies defeated her around 9:30. After Mrs. Chen left, Daniel checked on Emma. She was sprawled across her bed in her favorite pajamas, the ones with cartoon cats that were getting too small, but that she refused to give up. Her mouth was slightly open, one arm flung over her stuffed elephant. Daniel sat on the edge of her bed, careful not to wake her. In the dim glow from her nightlight, she looked impossibly small. 7 years old. Still young enough to believe her dad could fix anything, solve any problem, chase away any monster. What would happen if he took this job? Would she even understand what it meant? Would she be proud? Or would she just be confused about why everything was changing? And what if he failed? What if Victoria was wrong about him? What if he showed up to that fancy office and everyone realized within a week that Daniel Carter had no business running anything more complicated than an oil change? He thought about Marcus's words on that stage. You're a perfect example of what happens when people don't push themselves. When they accept limitation as destiny. Marcus had meant it as an insult. But sitting here in Emma's room, Daniel wondered if there wasn't a grain of truth in it. Not the way Marcus had meant it, not about being lazy or settling for less, but about being scared, about choosing safety over possibility because possibility felt too dangerous, too likely to blow up in his face. Daniel's phone buzzed. Another text from Victoria. I'm not usually this persistent, but I wanted you to know the offer stands regardless of what happened tonight. This isn't charity. This isn't me feeling guilty about what Webb said. This is me recognizing talent when I see it. Sleep on it. Call me Monday. He typed out 3 different responses and deleted them all. Finally, he just sent, Thank you, I will. Emma stirred in her sleep, mumbling something about purple crayons. Daniel kissed her forehead and went to his own room. Sleep didn't come easy. Sunday morning arrived with Emma jumping on his bed at 7:30, demanding pancakes and wanting to know everything about the party. Was it fancy? She asked, bouncing with enough force to make the bed frame creak. Did you wear the tie? Did anyone say mean things? Daniel caught her mid-bounce and pulled her down beside him. Yes, yes, and yes. What kind of mean things? The kind that don't matter anymore. Emma frowned. That's not a real answer. Gee, it's the only answer you're getting before coffee. Come on, let's make those pancakes. They spent the morning doing normal Sunday things. Pancakes that Daniel burned slightly. Cartoons that Emma had seen 17 times but still laughed at. A trip to the laundromat because their apartment building's machines had been broken for 3 weeks. Normal life, the kind Daniel knew how to navigate. But the business card was still in his jacket pocket, and by Sunday afternoon, Emma had noticed something was off. You're being weird, she announced, looking up from her coloring book. I'm not being weird. You are. You keep staring at nothing and then forgetting what you were doing. Daniel set down the dish he'd been washing for the past 5 minutes. I've got something on my mind, that's all. What kind of something? He should probably wait to tell her, should figure out what he was going to do first. But Emma was looking at him with those 2 smart eyes, and Daniel had never been good at lying to her. Someone offered me a job last night, he said. Emma's face lit up. A new job? That's good, right? You're always saying how we need more money. It's, yeah, it would be more money. A lot more money. Then why do you look sad about it? I'm not sad. I'm just thinking. About what? Daniel sat down next to her at the kitchen table. About whether I'd be good at it. About whether it would change too many things. About whether it's the right choice for us. Emma considered this seriously. What kind of job is it? It's in an office. I'd be helping run part of a big company. Would you have to wear a tie every day? Probably. Would you still have time to help with my homework? Yeah, the boss said I could set my own hours. Would we have to move? Oh, no. The office is here in the state. Emma thought about it for another moment, then shrugged. Then I don't see what the problem is. If it's more money and you can still help with homework and we don't have to move, it sounds good. It's not that simple, Bug. Why not? Because... Daniel struggled to put it into words. Because I don't know if I'm the right person for it. I fix cars. I've never worked in an office. What if I mess it up? Emma put down her crayon and looked at him like he was being particularly dense. Daddy, you always say trying is better than not trying. That's different. How? Because that's about you, about school and friends and learning new things. So? It works for you too. Emma picked her crayon back up. You should call the person and say yes. Then if you mess it up, at least you tried. And if you don't mess it up, we can get the apartment with the dishwasher. Daniel couldn't help but laugh. That's your priority? A dishwasher? You're always complaining about doing dishes. So yeah. She went back to her coloring like the conversation was over, like she'd just solved all of Daniel's problems with 7-year-old logic. Maybe she had. Monday morning, Daniel called in sick to work. It was the first time he'd done that in 3 years, and Carlos sounded genuinely concerned. You okay, man? You sound weird. Yes, I'm fine. I just need to handle something. Take your time. We're still slow anyway. Daniel hung up and stared at his phone for another 10 minutes before pulling up Victoria's number. His thumb hovered over the call button. This was insane. He should just delete the number, forget the whole thing ever happened, go back to his normal life. But Emma's voice echoed in his head. At least you tried. He pressed call before he could change his mind. Victoria answered on the second ring. Daniel, I was hoping I'd hear from you. Hi. Yeah, I wanted to talk about the offer. Of course. What questions do you have? All of them. Daniel laughed nervously. I don't even know where to start. Start anywhere. I've got time. Sit. So Daniel started asking questions. What would his responsibilities actually be? What kind of team would he be managing? What did a director of operations even do? And the big one, the one that had been keeping him up at night, why him? Victoria answered each question patiently, never making him feel stupid for asking. The director role would involve overseeing the Midwest office's daily operations, building relationships with local businesses, managing a team of about 15 people, and identifying investment opportunities in the region. As for why him, because I've interviewed hundreds of people for positions like this, Victoria said. And you know what they all have in common? They know how to talk the talk. They've got the degrees and the buzzwords and the 5-year plans. But when you ask them about actual hard choices, about times they've had to sacrifice or struggle or show up when it was difficult, they fall apart. Their hardest day was getting a B on a midterm. Their biggest sacrifice was turning down a better offer to work for a more prestigious company. And you think my experience is better? I think your experience is real. You've made impossible choices. You've managed resources when you had nothing to work with. You've led a team of one, your daughter, through circumstances that would have broken most people. That's the kind of judgment I need. That's the kind of character I want building my company's culture. Daniel was quiet for a moment. What if I fail? Then you fail. I've failed plenty of times. It's part of learning. But Daniel, I don't think you will. And more importantly, I'm willing to bet $8 billion of investor money that you won't. That's not reassuring. That's terrifying. Victoria laughed. Good. If you weren't scared, I'd be worried. Fear means you understand what's at stake. It means you'll take it seriously. They talked for another hour. Victoria laid out the details: salary, benefits, equity structure, start date. She'd want him to begin in 2 weeks if possible. There would be training, mentorship, support. She wasn't throwing him into the deep end and walking away. By the time they hung up, Daniel's head was spinning. But somewhere in the middle of all that information, a decision had formed. He called Carlos next. Hey, boss, I need to talk to you about something. Sure, what's up? I'm giving my 2 weeks' notice. There was a long pause. You're quitting? Yeah, I got offered another job. A really good one. Damn. I mean, congratulations, but damn. You're my best mechanic, Carter. I know, I'm sorry, but it's an opportunity I can't pass up. Carlos sighed. I get it. Can't say I'm happy about it, but I get it. You deserve good things, man. When do you start? There's 2 weeks from today. All right. Well, make them count. And hey, if it doesn't work out, you've always got a place here. Thanks, Carlos, for everything. After he hung up, Daniel sat in his quiet apartment and let it sink in. He'd just quit his job. He'd just agreed to take a position he was completely unqualified for. He'd just bet his and Emma's entire future on a chance encounter from 15 years ago. He must be out of his mind. His phone rang, a number he didn't recognize. Hello? Is this Daniel Carter? A woman's voice, crisp and professional. Yes. This is Margaret Stinson. I'm the HR director for Hale Consolidated. Victoria asked me to reach out about getting your paperwork started. Do you have a few minutes to go over some details? And just like that, it was real. The next 2 weeks blurred together. Daniel worked his remaining shifts at the auto shop, trying to memorize everything he could about how Carlos ran the business, how he handled difficult customers, managed inventory, dealt with suppliers. It was all information Daniel had absorbed passively over the years, but now he paid attention deliberately, storing it away for future reference. Emma told everyone at school that her dad was getting a new job at a big company. She said it with such pride that Daniel's chest hurt. Mrs. Chen cried when he told her, happy tears that she tried to hide behind her reading glasses. I knew something good was coming for you, she said. I just knew it. Victoria called 3 times during those 2 weeks, not to check up on him or second-guess her offer, but to talk, to ask about Emma, about what Daniel needed to feel prepared, about whether he had any concerns she could address before his start date. You're allowed to be nervous, she said during one call, but you're not allowed to back out. I've already had business cards printed. That's manipulative. That's motivated. There's a difference. On Daniel's last day at Martinez Auto Repair, Carlos threw him a small party in the garage. Just the other mechanics, some pizza, a card everyone had signed. It was simple and genuine and made Daniel realize how much he was going to miss this place. You better not forget us when you're rich and important, Carlos said. pulling Daniel into a hug that smelled like motor oil and Old Spice. I could never forget you guys. You gave me a shot when I needed it most. Yeah, well, you earned it every day you showed up. Now go earn this next thing. That night, Daniel took Emma out for ice cream to celebrate. They sat at a sticky table in the shop 2 blocks from their apartment, Emma with chocolate chip, Daniel with vanilla. Are you excited? Emma asked, swinging her legs. Excited and terrified. That's good. Mrs. Chen says that means you're doing something important. When did Mrs. Chen say that? When I told her I was scared about the art show. She said being scared and excited at the same time means it matters to you. Daniel smiled. Mrs. Chen's pretty smart. I know. That's why she's my best friend. Emma took a huge bite of ice cream, getting it all over her nose. Daddy? Yeah, Bug. Are you going to be different now? Like in the movies when people get fancy jobs and forget about their families? The question hit Daniel harder than he expected. He set down his ice cream and looked at his daughter. Really looked at her. At the chocolate on her nose, the gap in her teeth, the worry in her eyes that she was trying to hide. No, he said firmly. I'm not going to be different. I'm still going to make you breakfast and help with homework and read you stories at bedtime. The only thing that's changing is where I work and how much money we have. Everything else stays the same. I promise. You really promise? Cross my heart. Emma seemed satisfied with that. She went back to her ice cream, humming one of her favorite songs. But Daniel sat there thinking about the promise he'd just made. Could he keep it? Could he really take this new job with all its demands and expectations and unknowns and still be the same dad Emma needed him to be? He had to. That wasn't negotiable. His first day at Haley Consolidated started at 8 in the morning on a Monday that felt too bright and too real. Daniel had bought 2 new suits, nothing fancy, but professional enough that he didn't look like he'd wandered in from a garage. He'd gotten a haircut. He'd even bought new shoes that didn't have oil stains. Emma had insisted on taking a picture of him before he left. You look like a movie star, she said, squinting at her tablet. I look like someone playing dress-up. Same thing. The office was in a newly renovated building downtown, all glass and steel and modern art that Daniel didn't understand. The lobby had a fountain, an actual fountain, with water and stones and tiny fish swimming around. Daniel gave his name to the receptionist, a young guy with perfectly styled hair who smiled like he'd been hired specifically for his smile. Mr. Carter, we've been expecting you. I'll let Victoria know you're here. Can I get you anything? Coffee? Water? I'm good, thanks. The receptionist made a quick call, then gestured to the elevator. 23rd floor. Victoria's office is straight ahead when you exit. The elevator was the kind with glass walls that let you watch the city shrink below you as you rose. Daniel's stomach lurched with each floor. By the time he reached 23, he was seriously considering just riding back down and walking out. But the doors opened, and there was Victoria. She was dressed in a sharp gray suit, her hair pulled back, looking every inch the CEO worth billions. But when she saw Daniel, her face broke into a genuine smile. You came, she said. You sound surprised. I wasn't sure you wouldn't bolt at the last minute. She extended her hand. Welcome to Hale Consolidated, Daniel. Her handshake was firm, confident. Daniel tried to match it. Come on, Victoria said. Let me show you your office. The office was bigger than Daniel's entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, a massive desk made of some dark wood Daniel couldn't identify, shelves waiting to be filled, and a sitting area with a couch that probably cost more than his car. This is too much, Daniel said. This is standard for a director. Everyone at your level has a similar setup. Victoria walked to the window. I want you to feel like you belong here, Daniel, because you do. I wouldn't have hired you otherwise. I keep waiting for someone to figure out I have no idea what I'm doing. Nobody knows what they're doing when they start something new. The difference is whether you're willing to learn. Victoria checked her watch. I've got a meeting in 10 minutes, but Margaret is going to come get you and handle orientation. She'll introduce you to your team, show you around, get you set up with everything you need. This afternoon, you and I will sit down and go over your first projects. Projects. Right. Yeah. Daniel felt like he might throw up. Victoria put a hand on his shoulder. Breathe. You're going to be fine. Better than fine. Trust me. She left, and Daniel stood alone in his enormous office, looking out at a city. Margaret appeared 15 minutes later with a tablet, a smile, and enough energy to power a small city. She was maybe 50, with short gray hair and glasses on a chain around her neck. Daniel Carter, she said, like his name was something delightful. It's wonderful to meet you. Victoria has told me so much about you. Are you ready for the grand tour? As ready as I'll ever be. The office tour was overwhelming. Break rooms with coffee machines that probably cost more than Daniel made in a month at the auto shop. Conference rooms with technology Daniel didn't understand. A gym on the 19th floor. A daycare on the 3rd floor. Victoria hadn't been kidding about bringing Emma if needed. And then there was his team. Margaret led him to an open office area where 15 people were working at their desks. When Daniel walked in, they all looked up. Everyone, Margaret announced, this is Daniel Carter, your new director of operations. Daniel, this is your team. 15 faces stared at him. Some curious, some skeptical, some carefully neutral. Daniel recognized the look. These people had probably been expecting someone else. Someone with an MBA and a track record. Someone who looked like they belonged here. Instead, they got a mechanic in a cheap suit. A woman in her 30s stood up. She had dark hair in a bun and an expression that suggested she didn't suffer fools. I'm Rachel Kim, Senior Operations Manager. I've been running things while we waited for the position to be filled. In other words, she'd been expecting to get the job herself. Nice to meet you, Rachel, Daniel said. I'm looking forward to working with you. Likewise, Rachel's tone suggested otherwise. A younger guy with red hair and freckles raised his hand slightly. Jason Chen, I handle logistics. Just wanted to say welcome. Thanks, Jason. Others introduced themselves. Sarah. Marcus. Different Marcus, thankfully. David. Jennifer. Alicia. Names Daniel tried desperately to memorize and knew he'd forget within an hour. After the introductions, Margaret showed Daniel back to his office and left him with a stack of orientation materials roughly the size of a phone book. Read through these when you get a chance, she said cheerfully. Victoria will come get you around 2 for your meeting. If you need anything, my extension is 4012. Then she was gone, and Daniel was alone with a phone book's worth of company policies, benefits information, and operational procedures. He sat down at his massive desk, pulled out his phone, and texted Emma. Made it through the first hour. Only 7 more to go. She texted back immediately. You've got this, Daddy. Don't forget to eat lunch. Daniel smiled. 7 years old and already more responsible than he was. He spent the next few hours trying to make sense of the orientation materials. Some of it was standard, health insurance, vacation policy, expense reporting. But some of it was completely foreign, equity vesting schedules, investment review processes, quarterly board presentations. Daniel's phone buzzed with a calendar reminder at 1:45. Meeting with Victoria in 15 minutes. His stomach clenched. This was it. The moment where Victoria would lay out what she actually expected from him, and Daniel would have to either rise to it or admit he was in over his head. He straightened his tie, grabbed a notebook, and headed to Victoria's office. She was on the phone when he arrived, gesturing for him to sit. Her office was even bigger than his, with a view that stretched for miles. Photos on her desk showed what looked like family. An older couple who might be her parents, a dog, some friends at a beach somewhere. Victoria hung up and turned her full attention to Daniel. How was orientation? Informative, terrifying. Both. Both. That's accurate for most people's first day. She pulled out a folder. All right, let's talk about what you're actually going to be doing here. Your primary responsibility is overseeing the Midwest office's operations. That means managing your team, ensuring projects run smoothly, identifying inefficiencies, and building relationships with local businesses and potential investment opportunities. That's a lot of words that I mostly understand individually, but not together. Victoria laughed. Fair. Let me break it down. Right now, we've got 3 active projects in this region. The first is a manufacturing company in Ohio that we're considering investing in. They make industrial components, and they're looking to expand. Your job is to do the due diligence. Visit the facility, meet with leadership, assess whether they're actually as solid as they claim to be. How do I assess that? You look at how they treat their workers, how they maintain their equipment, whether their financials match what you see on the ground. You've spent 12 years in a shop, Daniel. You know what good operations look like and what corner cutting looks like. Trust that instinct. Daniel nodded slowly. Okay, I can do that. The second project is a tech startup here in the city. They've developed a supply chain management platform. Rachel's been handling the preliminary analysis, but I want you to take over. Work with her, learn from her, but ultimately you're the decision maker. Rachel doesn't seem thrilled about me being here. Rachel's brilliant, but she's also young and impatient. She thought she'd get this job, and honestly, she might have if you hadn't come along. But she'll come around once she sees you're not an idiot. Victoria said it matter-of-factly, like it was already decided. The third project is more exploratory. We're looking at the agricultural sector in this region. I want you to identify opportunities, innovative farming techniques, sustainable practices, companies that are doing something different. This one's yours to shape however you see fit. Daniel scribbled notes, his handwriting messier than he'd like. 3 projects. Due diligence. Trust his instinct. Don't be an idiot. Questions? Victoria asked. About 1 million, but I'll figure it out as I go. That's the right attitude. One more thing. I'm assigning you a mentor. Her name is Patricia Green. She's been with the company for 8 years, ran our West Coast operations before she semi-retired. She's agreed to work with you for the first 6 months, help you navigate the things you don't know. Thank you. That actually helps a lot. Victoria stood up, signaling the meeting was over. You're going to do great, Daniel. I have complete faith in you. I wish I had the same faith in myself. Give it time. It'll come. Daniel left Victoria's office with his notebook full of scribbled notes and his head full of doubts. But as he walked back to his own office, passing his team in their open workspace, he thought about what Emma had said. If you mess it up, at least you tried. He was trying. That was all he could do. The first week nearly killed him. Not literally, but close enough that Daniel found himself sitting in his car in the parking garage at 7 in the evening on Friday, too exhausted to drive home. His brain felt like someone had taken a blender to it. Investment memorandums, financial projections, market analyses. It was all a foreign language he was trying to learn while simultaneously pretending he already spoke it fluently. Rachel hadn't made it any easier. On Tuesday, she'd walked into his office with a stack of reports about the tech startup and dropped them on his desk with barely concealed irritation. These are the preliminary assessments, she'd said. I've highlighted the key concerns in yellow, the opportunities in green, and the red flags in red. Pretty self-explanatory. Daniel had looked at the stack, easily 3 inches thick.
You read all of this?
It's my job. Well, it was. Rachel's tone could have cut glass. The executive summary is on top if you just want the highlights. I'll read all of it. Rachel had raised an eyebrow. Really?
Really? If I'm making decisions, I need to understand what I'm deciding.
Something had shifted in Rachel's expression. Not warmth exactly, but maybe a degree less hostility. Most directors just skim the summary and sign off on whatever we recommend. I'm not most directors. No, Rachel had said slowly. I'm starting to see that. She'd left, and Daniel had spent the next 6 hours reading every word of those reports. Half of it went over his head. The other half he had to read 3 times before it started making sense. But by the end, he'd understood enough to have questions. Real questions, not the kind meant to sound smart. Wednesday, he'd met Patricia Green for the first time. She was in her early 60s, with silver hair she wore in a practical bob, and the kind of confidence that came from decades of knowing exactly what she was doing. She'd walked into his office, looked around, and said, "You haven't personalized it at all. That's either humility or imposter syndrome. Which is it?" "Probably both." Patricia had laughed. "Good answer. Victoria says you're sharp but inexperienced. I can work with that. What I can't work with is arrogance or laziness. You strike me as neither, so we should get along fine." They'd spent 3 hours going over the basics of due diligence. Patricia didn't talk down to him, but she didn't pretend things were simpler than they were either. She laid it out straight, what to look for, what questions to ask, what red flags meant walk away and what yellow flags meant dig deeper. The thing most people get wrong, Patricia had said, is they look at the numbers and ignore the people. But the numbers are just symptoms. The people are the disease or the cure, depending. You understand people, Daniel. Victoria told me about your background. Use that. I understand cars and mechanics. I'm not sure that translates. It translates better than you think. A shop runs on trust and routine and people knowing their roles. A business is the same thing, just bigger. The principles don't change. By Thursday, Daniel had been ready to visit the Ohio manufacturing company. Rachel had wanted to come along, partly to help, partly Daniel suspected to watch him crash and burn. He'd said yes to both. The drive to Cleveland had taken 4 hours. Rachel had spent the first hour in silence, working on her laptop. Around the second hour, she'd closed it and looked at him. Can I ask you something? Sure. Why did Victoria hire you? Daniel had kept his eyes on the road. She told you about the snowstorm? She told me you helped her once. She didn't give details. So Daniel had told her the whole story, the broken down car, the hypothermic college dropout, the coffee shop, the $5 he couldn't really afford. He'd left out the part about it being the last $5 because that felt like fishing for sympathy. Rachel had been quiet when he finished. Then she'd said, "That's it? You gave her a ride and some hot chocolate? That's it. And she's paying you $250,000 a year because of that." I think she's paying me because she believes I'll do the job well. The snowstorm just gave her a reason to take a chance on me. Rachel had stared out the window for a long moment. I worked my tail off for 6 years to get considered for director. I've got an MBA from Northwestern. I've run successful projects across 3 states. And Victoria hired someone with no degree, no experience, and no track record because he was nice to her 15 years ago. I'm sorry, Yek. Don't be sorry, be worth it. Rachel had turned back to him. That's all I ask. If you're going to have this job instead of me, be worth it. I'm trying. I know. That's the only reason I'm still here. The manufacturing facility had been exactly the kind of place Daniel understood. Concrete floors, the smell of metal and oil, workers in coveralls moving with practiced efficiency. The CEO, a man named Robert Chen, had given them the standard tour, showing off the new equipment, the organized workspace, the safety protocols. But Daniel had watched the workers instead, noticed how they moved, how they interacted with each other, whether they seemed stressed or comfortable. He'd asked to see the maintenance logs, the overtime records, the turnover rate. Robert had seemed surprised by the questions, but had provided the information. Afterward, in the parking lot, Rachel had looked at Daniel with something approaching respect. You actually knew what you were looking at in there. I've spent 12 years in shops. You learn to read a place. And the equipment is good, but they're running people too hard. Overtime's through the roof, and 3 of their best machinists have quit in the past 6 months. That's a culture problem, not an efficiency problem. Rachel had pulled out her tablet and started typing. I missed that. Pulled out. You were looking at the financial projections. I was looking at the people. Patricia said you'd do that. Patricia talks about me? She talks to Victoria, who talks to everyone. You're the hot gossip topic of the entire office, in case you didn't know. Daniel had groaned. Great. Could be worse. Could be Marcus Webb levels of gossip. What's Marcus Webb levels? Rachel had grinned. You didn't hear? Webb Industries lost their funding round. 3 different VC firms passed after what happened at your reunion went viral on LinkedIn. Someone filmed the whole thing on their phone. Cherish Montil. Daniel's stomach had dropped. Someone filmed it? Someone always films everything. You looked good, though. Very dignified. Webb looked like exactly what he is. A bully who finally got called out. Rachel had paused. I watched it 4 times. The part where you told him off was pretty satisfying. I didn't tell him off. I just told the truth. Same thing sometimes. Now, sitting in his car on Friday evening, Daniel replayed the week in his head. He'd survived. Barely, but he'd survived. And more than that, he'd actually contributed something. His assessment of the Ohio company had been solid. Patricia had said so. Even Rachel had admitted he'd caught something she'd missed. Maybe he could do this after all. His phone rang. Victoria.
You're still at the office, she said without preamble. How do you know that?
Security alerts me when directors are here after 7. It's a safety thing. Go home, Daniel. I was just about to. Good. And take the weekend off. Actually off, not working from home off. I've got reports to review.
They'll still be there Monday. You've had a hell of a first week.
Go be with your daughter. That's an order from your boss. Daniel smiled despite his exhaustion.
Yes, ma'am.
And Daniel, you did well this week. Better than well. I heard about Cleveland. You're already proving me right about you. After they hung up, Daniel drove home. Emma was waiting at the window. She always waited at the window on Fridays and burst out the door when she saw his car pull up. Daddy! She launched herself at him before he'd even fully gotten out. You're late. I know, Bug. I'm sorry. Mrs. Chen made dumplings again, but I saved you some. They're probably cold now, though. Cold dumplings are still good dumplings. They went inside and Daniel microwaved his dinner while Emma talked nonstop about her week. Madison had apologized for being mean. They were friends now. There was going to be a field trip to the Science Museum. She'd gotten 100 on her spelling test. Normal kid things. Normal life. Exactly what Daniel needed after a week of feeling like he was drowning. Later, after Emma was in bed, Mrs. Chen came up with tea.
You look tired, she said, settling into the worn armchair. I am tired, but it's a good tired, I think.
The job is going well. I have no idea. I think so? Maybe. Daniel laughed. I honestly can't tell if I'm doing okay or if everyone's just being polite while they wait for me to fail. You're doing more than okay. Emma says you leave early and come home late, but you still help with her homework every night. That's not someone who's failing. That's just being a dad. That's being a good dad. There's a difference. Mrs. Chen sipped her tea. You know what I think? What? I think you're scared because this is going well. You're so used to things being hard that success feels wrong, like you're waiting for the other shoe to drop. Daniel started to argue, then stopped. She was right. Every good thing that had happened in the past 2 weeks felt temporary, fragile, like it could disappear any second. How do I stop feeling that way? He asked. You don't. You just keep showing up anyway. The next morning, Saturday, Daniel woke up to find Emma already dressed and eating cereal at the kitchen table. We're going somewhere today, she announced. Oh, really? Where? It's a surprise. Mrs. Chen is coming too. Daniel looked at Mrs. Chen, who was innocently drinking her coffee and pretending not to hear. What kind of surprise? The good kind? Get dressed? Wear jeans. Us. An hour later, they were at an animal shelter. Emma had apparently been planning this for weeks with Mrs. Chen's help. You're always sad when you come home, Emma explained as they walked past rows of kennels. And dogs make people not sad. Mrs. Chen read it on the internet. Bug, we can't afford a dog. They're expensive. We can now. You make more money. That's not how it works. But Emma wasn't listening. She'd stopped in front of a kennel containing the scruffiest, ugliest dog Daniel had ever seen. It was maybe 30 pounds, with wiry brown fur that stuck up in all directions, one ear that flopped, and one that stood straight up, and eyes that looked simultaneously hopeful and resigned. This one, Emma said. His name is Bones, and he's been here for 8 months, and nobody wants him because he's weird-looking. Daniel looked at the dog. The dog looked back at him with those sad eyes. Emma, please, Daddy. He's just like us. Nobody wanted us either, but we're good. He's probably good too. That hit Daniel right in the chest. People wanted us. Not really. You said the reunion people thought you were a loser. And Mommy's family stopped calling after she died, so it was just us. And now it's time for us to want somebody else. Daniel knelt down next to Emma. The dog, Bones, came to the front of the kennel and pressed his nose against the chain link. This is a big responsibility, Daniel said. Dogs need food and vet visits and attention. Are you ready for that? Wait. Are you? Smart kid. Too smart. The shelter volunteer, a college-age girl with purple hair, appeared beside them. Bones is a great dog, super friendly, house-trained, good with kids. He's a mixed breed, We think maybe terrier and schnauzer and possibly some kind of hound. He just has a face only a mother could love.
I love his face, Emma said firmly.
The volunteer smiled. Then he might be perfect for you. Want to meet him in the interaction room? 20 minutes later, Daniel was filling out adoption papers while Bones sat in Emma's lap, his tail wagging so hard his whole back end shook.
I can't believe I'm doing this, Daniel muttered.
Believe it, Mrs. Chen said. This dog needs you. You need this dog. Emma needs this dog. It's perfect. It wasn't perfect. Perfect would be not adding another expense to their budget. But watching Emma's face as she hugged Bones, Daniel couldn't bring himself to care about perfect. They stopped at a pet store on the way home, another expense, and bought food, bowls, a leash, a bed, and toys that Bones immediately destroyed. By evening, the apartment was covered in dog hair and chew marks, and Daniel couldn't remember the last time he'd seen Emma this happy. Thank you, Daddy, she said at bedtime. Bones curled up at the foot of her bed despite Daniel's protests. This is the best day ever. You're welcome, Bug. See? Good things happen when you're brave. She fell asleep within minutes, one hand resting on Bones's scruffy head. Daniel stood in the doorway watching them, this weird little family he'd somehow built from nothing. Monday arrived too fast. Daniel got to the office at 7:30, caffeinated and determined to tackle the tech startup analysis. Rachel was already there, which didn't surprise him. You're early, she said. So are you. Ooh. I'm always early. You're new. She held up a coffee cup. I brought you coffee. Consider it a peace offering. Daniel took the cup suspiciously. What's the occasion? I talked to Patricia over the weekend. She said you're asking the right questions, which means you're learning. And she said you caught the culture issue in Cleveland, which means you're paying attention. Rachel sat down across from his desk. I was wrong about you. Not completely wrong. You do have a lot to learn, but wrong enough that I owe you an apology. You don't owe me anything. Yeah, I do. I've been making this harder than it needs to be because I was bitter. That's not fair to you or the team or the company. Rachel paused. So, truce? Daniel extended his hand. Truce. They shook on it, and something shifted in the office dynamic after that. Rachel started actually collaborating instead of just grudgingly complying. She explained things without the edge of condescension. She even laughed at one of Daniel's terrible jokes during a team meeting on Wednesday. The tech startup analysis took most of the week. Daniel read every document, attended demos of the software platform, interviewed the founders and their key employees. By Friday, he had enough information to make a recommendation. He scheduled a meeting with Victoria for Friday afternoon. She listened while he walked through his analysis. The technology was solid. The market opportunity was real. But the founders had no operational experience, no clear plan for scaling, and a tendency to overpromise and underdeliver. My recommendation is to pass, Daniel said. Or if we do invest, it needs to be contingent on them bringing in experienced leadership. The founders are brilliant engineers, but they're not business people. Someone needs to be the adult in the room. Get Barstol. Victoria leaned back in her chair, studying him. You know what Rachel's recommendation was? I'm guessing she said invest. She said invest with conditions similar to what you just outlined. You two came to the same conclusion independently. That's good. That means the analysis is sound. So we're passing? We're passing. I'll have legal draft the declination letter. Victoria smiled. You just saved the company from a potentially expensive mistake. How does that feel? He bought Bongan Barty. Terrifying. What if I'm wrong? Then we miss an opportunity. But I don't think you're wrong. Your instincts are good, Daniel. You just need to trust them more. That weekend, Emma's school held its annual art show. Daniel had completely forgotten about it until Emma reminded him Thursday night, sending him into a mild panic about whether he could leave work early on Friday. But Victoria had seen it on his calendar. He'd started putting Emma's school events in his work calendar as a reminder, and had told him to take the afternoon off. Family comes first, she'd said. Always. That's non-negotiable. So Friday afternoon found Daniel standing in the elementary school gymnasium, surrounded by finger paintings and clay sculptures and the chaotic energy of 100 proud parents. Emma's drawing of the two of them at the park,
the one with Daniel's impossibly long arms, was displayed prominently on the second grade wall. "That's us," Emma said, pointing unnecessarily.
See? You're really tall in the picture because you're tall in real life.
"I'm not that tall, Bug. You are to me."
Daniel's throat felt tight. He put his arm around Emma's shoulders and pulled her close.
"It's perfect," he said. "You're incredibly talented." "I know. Mrs. Patterson said so too."
They were looking at another student's sculpture, something that might have been a dinosaur or possibly a table. It was hard to tell, when Daniel heard a familiar voice behind him. Daniel Carter, Small World. He turned to find Marcus Webb standing there in jeans and a polo shirt, looking significantly less polished than he had at the reunion. A boy about Emma's age stood next to him, holding his hand.
"Marcus?" Daniel kept his voice neutral. "What are you doing here?"
"My nephew's in second grade. I promised my sister I'd come to the art show."
"Us."
Marcus looked uncomfortable.
"I didn't know you had a kid here." "Emma, second grade, this is her drawing." Daniel gestured at the picture.
Marcus looked at it, and something complicated crossed his face. "It's good, really good. Thanks." They stood in awkward silence. Marcus's nephew wandered off to find his friends, leaving the two men alone in the middle of the gymnasium chaos.
"Look," Marcus said finally, "about the reunion. That was out of line. All of it.
I was trying to make myself look good by making you look bad, and that was wrong." Daniel hadn't expected an apology, wasn't sure he wanted one.
"Why?"
Why was it wrong? Or why did I do it? Both. Marcus rubbed the back of his neck. "It was wrong because you didn't deserve it. You never did anything to me. Not in high school, not after. I was just insecure and cruel, and I took it out on you because you were an easy target." He paused. "As for why I did it, I guess I wanted to prove I'd won, that the hierarchy from high school was the right one, that I deserved to be where I am, and you deserved to be where you were. And now I realize how pathetic that sounds, and how wrong I was about pretty much everything." Marcus looked directly at Daniel. "I heard you're working for Hale Consolidated now, director position. That's impressive. It's a good opportunity." "It's more than that. Victoria Hale doesn't hire people on a whim. If she gave you that job, it's because she believes you're the best person for it." Marcus's voice dropped. "I also heard she pulled our funding because of what I did at the reunion. That's on me. I don't blame you for it. I didn't ask her to do that." "Boys." "I know. But she did it anyway, because that's what happens when you treat people like garbage. Eventually it comes back around." Marcus extended his hand. "I'm not asking for forgiveness.
"I don't deserve it, but I am sorry for all of it. High school, the reunion, everything." "We'll say this out."
Daniel looked at Marcus's outstretched hand. Part of him wanted to walk away, to let Marcus feel the weight of his apology being rejected. But Emma's words echoed in his head. Good things happen when you're brave. And maybe forgiveness was its own kind of bravery. He shook Marcus's hand. "Apology accepted." "Really? Really? Holding on to anger takes too much energy, and I've got better things to spend it on." Marcus nodded slowly. "You always were a better person than me. I just wasn't smart enough to see it." They talked for a few more minutes. Awkward but genuine conversation about their kids, their work, their lives. When Marcus's nephew returned and dragged him away to see his art project, Daniel felt something loosen in his chest. He'd spent 15 years carrying the weight of high school around with him. Maybe it was time to set it down. Emma appeared at his elbow. "Who was that?" "Someone from a long time ago." "Was he nice?" Daniel thought about it. "He's trying to be. That's what matters." The following week brought new challenges. The agricultural project Victoria had assigned him was proving harder than expected. Daniel spent hours researching farming techniques, sustainable practices, and agritech companies. Most of it was completely outside his wheelhouse. Patricia found him in his office late Thursday afternoon, surrounded by reports and looking defeated. "You're overthinking it," she said. "I don't know anything about agriculture. You don't need to know everything. You need to know enough to ask good questions and recognize good answers. Patricia sat down. What's the core problem you're trying to solve? Finding investment opportunities in sustainable farming. Wrong, that's the task. What's the problem? Daniel thought about it. Small farmers are getting squeezed out by corporate operations. They can't compete on scale, so they need to compete on quality or innovation. But they don't have the capital to invest in the technology that would let them do that. There it is. Now you're thinking like a director. Patricia smiled. You don't need to understand the science of crop rotation. You need to understand the human problem. People who want to do good work but don't have the resources. That's something you understand very well. She was right. And once Daniel shifted his thinking that way, the project started making sense. He began identifying small, innovative farms doing interesting things with limited resources. Places that reminded him of Martinez Auto Repair, scrappy, efficient, run by people who cared more about the work than the profit. By the end of the month, he had a list of potential investments. Victoria approved 3 of them immediately. This is exactly what I was hoping you'd find, she said. These are companies that bigger firms would overlook because they're not flashy or high-tech, but they're solid, they're sustainable, and they're going to change their industry from the ground up. I just looked for places that reminded me of where I came from, Daniel admitted. That's why it works. You see what others miss. 3 months into the job, Daniel finally felt like he knew what he was doing. Not completely. There were still moments of panic and confusion, but enough that he stopped waiting for someone to realize he didn't belong there. His team had come together in unexpected ways. Rachel had become something close to a friend, or at least a trusted colleague. Jason had started coming to Daniel with questions about process improvement, saying Daniel explained things in a way that made sense. Even the skeptics had started to come around. Emma had adjusted too. She loved having more money for school supplies and activities, loved that they could afford to get Bones properly groomed, though he still looked ridiculous afterward. Loved telling her friends that her dad worked in a big office with a fountain. Must sense. But the best part, the part Daniel hadn't expected, was that the job had given him something beyond financial stability. It had given him confidence. Not the fake kind he'd been trying to project, but real confidence built on actual accomplishments. He'd made good decisions. He'd caught mistakes before they became expensive. He'd built relationships with business owners who trusted him. He'd proven Victoria right about him, and more importantly, he'd proven himself right about himself. One evening in late November, Daniel was working late when Victoria knocked on his door. "Got a minute?" she asked. "Of course." She came in and sat down, which was unusual. Victoria rarely sat down for casual conversations. "I wanted to talk to you about something. We're expanding faster than anticipated, and I need someone to oversee the entire Midwest region, not just operations, but investments, partnerships, all of it." "Okay, who are you thinking?" "You." Daniel's pen stopped mid-note. "Me?" "It's a promotion, regional director, significant increase in responsibility and compensation. You'd have 4 offices under you instead of 1, a team of about 60 people total, and direct oversight of a $2 billion investment portfolio." "Victoria, I've been here 3 months. And in 3 months, you've proven you can handle complexity, build teams, and make smart decisions under pressure. That's worth more than 3 years of mediocre performance." She leaned forward. "I'm not offering this because I feel sorry for you or because I owe you something. I'm offering it because you're the best person for the job. Say yes." Daniel looked at her, at the absolute certainty in her face. She believed in him. Maybe it was time he believed in himself, too. "Yes," he said. "I'll do it." Victoria smiled. "Good. You start January 1st. That gives you a month to transition. And Daniel? Yeah? Thank you for taking a chance on me that night 15 years ago. I promise this is just the beginning of me paying it forward." After she left, Daniel sat in his office looking out at the city lights. Somewhere down there was his apartment, where Emma and Bones were probably sprawled on the couch watching TV, where Mrs. Chen was probably making tea and reading her book, where his real life was waiting for him. He'd come so far from that scared kid in high school, from the struggling single father working himself to death for minimum wage. He'd done it not by becoming someone else, but by becoming more fully himself. His phone buzzed. A text from Emma. When are you coming home? Bones misses you. Also, I miss you. Daniel packed his bag and headed for the elevator, already thinking about tomorrow's challenges and opportunities, already planning how to be worth the faith Victoria had placed in him. But tonight, he was just going home to his daughter and their ridiculous dog. And that, he thought as he walked out into the cold November air, was exactly where he needed to be. 2 years later, Daniel stood in front of a room full of teenagers at Riverside High School and wondered how the hell he'd ended up back here. The invitation had come from Principal Morrison, no relation to Jennifer from the reunion, asking if Daniel would speak to students about career paths and overcoming obstacles. Victoria had encouraged him to say yes. Rachel had called it poetic justice. Emma had said it would be cool to see where her dad went to school, even if the building smelled weird. So here he was, wearing a suit that actually fit him now, looking at faces that reminded him of his own 15 years ago. Some confident, some lost, all of them trying to figure out who they were supposed to become. I'm not going to lie to you, Daniel started. When I graduated from this school, I had no idea what I was doing. No college plans, no career goals, just a beat-up truck, and a mom who worked 2 jobs to keep me fed. The guidance counselors had written me off. My classmates barely knew I existed, and honestly, I'd kind of written myself off too. A few students shifted in their seats. One kid in the back, wearing the same kind of secondhand jacket Daniel used to wear, was actually paying attention. I spent the next 12 years working as a mechanic. It was honest work, and I was good at it, but I wasn't exactly setting the world on fire. I was just surviving, raising my daughter alone, paying bills, trying to keep my head above water. Daniel paused. And then something happened that changed everything. But it wasn't what you think. He told them about the reunion, about Marcus and the humiliation and standing on that stage feeling like the biggest failure in the room. He didn't sugarcoat it or make himself sound braver than he'd been. He told them the truth, that he'd been terrified and angry and ready to walk out. The thing that saved me wasn't Victoria showing up, even though that's what everyone focuses on. What saved me was deciding to show up in the first place. Deciding that being scared wasn't a good enough reason to hide. Because here's what I learned. Success isn't about never failing or never being afraid. It's about what you do when you're in the middle of failing and afraid. The kid in the back was leaning forward now. A girl in the front row was taking notes. Victoria offered me a job that night. And yeah, that was incredible. Life-changing. But you know what the hard part was? Actually taking it. Actually believing I deserved it. Actually showing up every day to an office where I was the least qualified person in the room and choosing to learn instead of quit. Daniel looked around the room, making eye contact with as many students as he could. Some of you are going to leave here and go straight to college and climb ladders and check all the boxes society says you're supposed to check. That's great. But some of you are going to take weird paths. You're going to struggle and fail and wonder if you made the wrong choices. And I'm here to tell you that those weird paths matter just as much, maybe more. He spent the next 20 minutes answering questions. What did a regional director actually do? How did he go from knowing nothing to running a division? What advice would he give his high school self? That last question came from the kid in the back. Name tag said Trevor. I tell myself that the people who make you feel small are usually the ones who feel smallest inside, Daniel said. And I'd tell myself to stop waiting for permission to be good enough. You're already good enough. You just have to believe it and do the work. After the assembly, Trevor approached him in the hallway. Mr. Carter, can I ask you something? Sure, The kid looked nervous. Did you really mean that stuff about weird paths? Because I'm not going to college. Can't afford it. And my grades aren't good enough for scholarships anyway. Everyone says I'm throwing my life away. Daniel saw himself in this kid so clearly it hurt. What do you want to do? I like working with my hands, building things. I've been helping my uncle with construction, and it's the only thing I'm actually good at. Then do that. Learn everything you can. Be the best at it. And don't let anyone make you feel like manual labor is somehow less valuable than sitting in an office. Daniel pulled out his wallet and handed Trevor his business card. If you ever need a reference or advice, or just someone to tell you you're not crazy, call me. I mean it. Trevor looked at the card like it was made of gold. Thank you, Mr. Carter. Call me Daniel. And Trevor, you're going to be fine. Better than fine. Work it. Watching the kid walk away, Daniel felt something settle in his chest. This was why Victoria had pushed him to do this. Not for his own closure, but because his story might matter to someone else. Might give them permission to take their own weird path. Emma was waiting for him in the parking lot, sitting on the hood of his car. A new one now. Nothing fancy but reliable. Playing with bones. Who'd gotten bigger and somehow even scruffier. "How'd it go?" she asked.
Good, I think. Weird being back here. Did you see your old locker? I tried to find it, but they renovated. Everything's different now.
Emma hopped down from the car. "That's probably good though, right? Like you're different too, so it makes sense the school is different."
When did you get so wise? I've always been wise. You just notice it more now.
She climbed into the back seat with Bones. "Can we get pizza for dinner? The kind with the stuffed crust?" "Chuch. Yeah, Bug, we can get pizza." Driving away from Riverside High for what he suspected was the last time, Daniel thought about all the versions of himself who'd walked through those doors. The scared freshman, the bullied sophomore, the invisible junior, the desperate to escape senior. And now this, the guy who'd come back not to prove anything, but to offer a hand to kids who might need it. He'd finally made peace with that building and everything it represented. The next few months blurred together in the best possible way. Daniel's expanded role meant more travel, but he'd structured it so he was never gone more than 2 nights in a row. Emma's schedule came first, always. He coached her soccer team, badly but enthusiastically. He helped with science projects and spelling tests, and the elaborate diorama about ecosystems that nearly destroyed their dining room table. Work was challenging but no longer terrifying. He'd built a team he trusted across 4 states. He'd closed deals worth hundreds of millions. He'd been featured in a business magazine article about unconventional paths to leadership, which had been surreal and slightly embarrassing. But the thing he was most proud of had nothing to do with work. 6 months after his speech at Riverside High, Daniel had proposed an idea to Victoria. A mentorship program connecting Hale Consolidated employees with young people from disadvantaged backgrounds. Not charity, not pity, actual mentorship. Teaching them about business, helping them build networks, giving them opportunities they wouldn't otherwise have. Victoria had loved it immediately. "This is exactly the kind of thing we should be doing. Build it. You have whatever resources you need." The program launched in the fall. Daniel recruited volunteers from across the company, partnered with schools in underserved areas, and personally mentored 5 kids himself. Trevor was one of them. The kid from Riverside had taken Daniel up on the offer to stay in touch, and Daniel had helped him get into a skilled trades program. Watching these kids grow and learn and start to believe in themselves was better than any promotion or raise. This was the work that mattered. On a cold December evening, almost exactly 3 years after that reunion, Daniel sat in his office reviewing applications for the mentorship program's expansion. His phone rang. Marcus Webb. They'd stayed in loose touch since the art show. Occasional emails, a lunch meeting here and there. Marcus had rebuilt his company's reputation slowly, and he'd changed in ways that seemed genuine, less arrogant, more thoughtful. "Therapy," he'd admitted once. "Lots of therapy." "Daniel, hey, you got a minute?" "Sure, what's up?" "I wanted to run something by you. Webb Industries is launching a scholarship fund for low-income students pursuing skilled trades. I know that's in your wheelhouse, and I was hoping you might help me structure it. Make sure we're actually helping kids and not just making ourselves look good." Daniel smiled. "Yeah, I can do that. Send me what you're thinking, and we'll set up a meeting." "Thanks. And Daniel, I'm trying to do better, be better. Your program with Hale gave me the idea. Figured I should stop talking about making amends and actually do something." "That's good, Marcus. Really good." After they hung up, Daniel sat back in his chair. 3 years ago, the idea of working with Marcus Webb on anything would have seemed impossible. But people changed. Not always, and not easily, but sometimes they did. And when they put in the real work, it showed. Emma's 9th birthday came in January, and she wanted a party at their apartment, which was bigger now, 2 bedrooms instead of 1, in a better building with working appliances and no water stains. She invited her entire class, which turned out to be 23 children who destroyed the place in under an hour. Daniel didn't mind. He stood in his kitchen watching Emma laugh with her friends, bones weaving between small legs trying to steal dropped cake, and felt something close to contentment. "You look happy," Mrs. Chen said, appearing beside him with a plate of cookies she'd brought. "I am happy. You've come a long way, Daniel. We've come a long way. I couldn't have done any of this without you." Mrs. Chen patted his arm. "You would have found a way. You always do. But I'm glad I got to be part of it." That night, after the last parent had collected their sugar-high child and Emma had crashed hard on the couch, Daniel cleaned up the wreckage of the party. Paper plates, deflated balloons, mysterious sticky spots on every surface. Normal family chaos. His phone buzzed. Victoria. "Board meeting next week. They want to hear about the mentorship program expansion. You'll present." Non-negotiable. Daniel's stomach clenched instinctively, then relaxed. A year ago, the idea of presenting to Hale Consolidated's board of directors would have sent him into panic. Now, it was just part of the job. Nerve-wracking, sure, but manageable. "I'll be ready," he typed back. The board presentation went well. Daniel had learned to translate his ideas into the language these people spoke. Return on investment, long-term value creation, brand differentiation. But he'd also learned to keep the human element front and center, to remind them that behind every metric was a person whose life could be changed. "This isn't just good PR," he told the 12 people around the polished conference table. "This is good business. The kids in this program are learning skills and building loyalty to our company. 5 years from now, they'll be the employees, the entrepreneurs, the community leaders we want to work with. We're not investing in charity. We're investing in our future workforce and our future partners." The CFO, a sharp woman named Linda Chen, nodded approvingly. "The numbers back that up. Employee engagement is up 15% since the program launched. Retention is up. Even our recruitment pipeline has improved. People want to work for companies that give back meaningfully." The board approved the expansion unanimously. Afterward, Victoria pulled Daniel aside. "That was masterful. You've got the board eating out of your hand. I just told them the truth. You told them a story they could understand and believe in. That's a skill not everyone has." Victoria paused. "I'm putting you forward for VP consideration. Executive committee wants to meet you next month." Daniel's heart jumped. "Victoria, I don't know if I'm ready for—" "Stop. You're ready. You've been ready for months. I'm not asking if you want it. I'm telling you it's happening. Get comfortable with it." Vice President. 2 years ago, he'd been afraid to take a director role. Now he was being considered for the executive team. Emma's reaction when he told her was characteristically Emma. "Does that mean more money?" "Probably, yeah." "Cool. Can we get a bigger place with a yard for Bones?" "Maybe. Is that important to you?" Emma shrugged. "I like our apartment, but Bones would like a yard. He's always trying to chase squirrels at the park." "I'll think about it." "That's adult speak for yes." Daniel laughed. "When did you get so good at reading me?" "I've always been good at it. You just keep forgetting." They moved into a small house that spring. Nothing extravagant, but theirs. 3 bedrooms, a fenced backyard, a garage where Daniel kept his tools even though he rarely used them anymore. Emma got to paint her room purple. Bones got his yard and immediately dug holes in all of Mrs. Chen's carefully planted flower beds. Mrs. Chen had moved into the guest house out back. She'd tried to refuse, saying she couldn't afford it, but Daniel had insisted. She was family. Family didn't get left behind. The VP promotion came through in June. Daniel's first act was to promote Rachel to regional director, taking over his old position. "You earned this a long time ago," he told her. "I'm just making it official." Rachel had tears in her eyes. "Thank you for not being an asshole about being my boss. I know I didn't make it easy at first. You made me better. That's what good colleagues do." His second act was to expand the mentorship program to 10 more cities. His third was to establish a fund for employees facing financial hardship. Medical bills, housing emergencies, things that could destroy someone's life the way they'd almost destroyed his. "I know what it's like to choose between rent and groceries," he told the executive committee. "None of our employees should have to make that choice. We can afford to help them." The fund passed unanimously. One evening in late summer, Daniel found himself at a company event, a fundraiser for the mentorship program. The ballroom was full of donors and executives and local business leaders. Daniel worked the room with an ease that would have shocked his younger self, shaking hands and making small talk and representing the company with confidence. He was mid-conversation with a potential donor when he saw someone familiar across the room, Sarah Brennan, the girl who'd once told him his jeans looked like they came from a homeless shelter. She was older now, polished, talking to a group of women near the bar. Daniel excused himself from the conversation and made his way over. "Sarah?" She turned, and recognition flashed across her face. "Daniel Carter. Wow. I heard you were working here, but seeing you in person is different. It's good to see you." "Is it?" Sarah smiled, but it was edged with something that might have been shame. "I wasn't particularly nice to you in high school. Most people weren't. That's not an excuse. I was cruel because it was easy, and because everyone else was doing it. That doesn't make it right." She paused. "I'm sorry. I should have said that years ago at the reunion, but I didn't have the guts." "I appreciate you saying it now." They talked for a few minutes, surface conversation about work and life and how strange it was that they'd ended up in the same room again. Sarah had become a lawyer, married, divorced, started over. She seemed genuinely interested in the mentorship program. "I'd like to donate," she said. "And if you need volunteers, I could help with legal education, teaching kids about contracts and rights and how to protect themselves. I think I owe that, in a way. So, you don't owe anything, but if you want to help, we'd love to have you." After Sarah walked away, Daniel stood there thinking about forgiveness and second chances and how people carried their regrets. He'd let go of his anger at her years ago, but seeing her apologize still meant something. Meant that growth was possible for everyone, not just him. Emma turned 10. Trevor graduated from his trades program and got hired by a major construction company. Marcus Webb's scholarship fund helped 23 kids in its first year. Daniel's mentorship program expanded to 30 cities. Life wasn't perfect. There were still hard days at work, still moments of doubt, still times when Daniel felt like he was faking it. Emma hit the preteen years and developed opinions about everything. Bones ate an entire chocolate cake and had to go to the emergency vet. Mrs. Chen's health scared them all when she had a fall, though she recovered fine and claimed everyone was overreacting. But these problems were manageable, normal, the kind of challenges that came from actually living instead of just surviving. On the 4th anniversary of the reunion, a date Daniel only remembered because Facebook reminded him, he sat in his backyard watching Emma and Bones play while Mrs. Chen read on the porch. The evening was warm, peaceful, the kind of moment that would have seemed impossible 4 years ago. His phone rang. Victoria. "Hey, you busy?" Just watching Emma try to teach Bones to fetch. "He's terrible at it." Victoria laughed. "I won't keep you long. I wanted to give you a heads up about something. I'm stepping back from day-to-day operations. Staying on as board chair, but I'm handing CEO duties to someone else." Daniel's stomach dropped. Victoria gulped. "Relax. The company's fine. I'm fine. I'm just ready for the next chapter. I've been doing this for 15 years. It's time." She paused. "I'm recommending you as my replacement." The world seemed to tilt. "You're recommending me to be CEO." "I am. You've proven you can lead. You understand operations, strategy, people. You embody everything this company stands for. The board will make the final decision, but they trust my judgment. I don't know if I can..." "Daniel, stop talking. You can. You will. And you'll be great at it. But I need you to say yes first." He looked at Emma, at this life he'd built from nothing, at the journey from that scared mechanic to this moment. And he thought about what he'd told those kids at Riverside High. Success is about what you do when you're in the middle of failing and afraid. "Yes," he said. "I'll do it." "Good. Meeting with the board next week. Wear your nice suit." "I have several nice suits now." "I know. I'm very proud of that growth." After they hung up, Emma came running over, Bones at her heels. "Who was that?" "Victoria. She wants me to take over as CEO." Emma's eyes went wide. "Of the whole company?" "Of the whole company. That's like the biggest boss there is, right?" "Pretty much." Emma considered this seriously. Are you going to say yes?
I already did. Good.
You should be the biggest boss. You're the best boss I know. I'm the only boss you know, Bug. Still counts. The board approved Victoria's recommendation. Daniel became CEO of Hale Consolidated 6 months later, in a transition that was both terrifying and oddly natural. He'd been preparing for this without realizing it. Every challenge he'd faced, every mistake he'd made and learned from, every person he'd led and learned from in return. His first act as CEO was to establish a foundation focused on economic mobility, helping people move from poverty to stability to success. Not through charity, but through investment, education, and opportunity. The Daniel Carter Foundation, though he'd tried to name it literally anything else. Your name goes on it, Victoria had insisted. Your story is what makes people believe in it. Let them see where you came from and where you got to. That matters. The foundation launched with Trevor as one of its first youth ambassadors. The kid who'd approached Daniel after that high school speech was now 22, running his own small construction business, and speaking to other young people about skilled trades and alternative paths to success. You told me I'd be fine, Trevor said at the foundation's launch event. You were right, but more than that, you showed me it was possible. That's what this foundation does, shows people it's possible. Daniel stood on a stage much bigger than the one at that reunion, looking out at hundreds of people who'd come to support the foundation. Donors, volunteers, program participants, press. Emma was in the front row with Mrs. Chen, both of them beaming. I'm not going to stand here and tell you some story about pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, Daniel said, because that's not how it works. Nobody succeeds alone. I didn't. I had people who believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. I had opportunities that were equal parts luck and timing. I had a daughter who kept me showing up even when I wanted to quit. He found Emma in the crowd and smiled at her. What I did have control over was how I responded to those opportunities. Whether I let fear make my decisions or whether I chose to try anyway. Whether I let the people who tried to make me feel small actually make me small. Whether I used my struggles as an excuse or as fuel. Daniel paused, gathering his thoughts. Cool. Daniel, here's what I learned. Your worth isn't determined by your worst day or your biggest failure or what bullies say about you. Your worth is determined by what you do with what you're given, how you show up, how you treat people, whether you help others when you have the chance. He looked around the room, making eye contact with as many people as he could. This foundation exists because someone once showed me kindness when I needed it most. Because Victoria Hale saw potential in a scared mechanic and gave him a chance. Because I want to do the same thing for others. Not save them, but give them a shot. Let them save themselves. The applause was thunderous, but Daniel barely heard it. He was looking at Emma, at the pride on her face, and thinking about all the moments that had led here. The reunion where he'd almost walked out. The snowstorm 15 years earlier. Every choice to keep going when quitting seemed easier. That night, after the event, Daniel and Emma sat in their backyard. Bones was asleep at their feet. The stars were out. The world felt quiet and right. Daddy? Emma's voice was soft. Are you happy? Yeah, Bug. I really am. Good. You deserve to be happy. So do you. Are you? Emma nodded. I think so. I mean, school's hard sometimes, and Madison can still be annoying, and I wish Mom was here, but yeah, I'm happy. Daniel pulled her close. Your mom would be so proud of you, of the person you're becoming. She'd be proud of you too. Yeet bum? They sat there in comfortable silence, and Daniel thought about Sarah, about how much he wished she could see this. See Emma, see the life they'd built, see that they'd made it through the impossible. But maybe she could see it. Maybe wherever she was, she knew, and maybe that was enough. I love you, Bug, Daniel said. Love you too, Daddy. Yeah. 5 years after that reunion, Daniel Carter stood in his office, the CEO's office now, with its ridiculous view and its shelves filled with photos of Emma and awards he still felt weird about, and took stock of his life. He ran a company worth $12 billion. He employed hundreds of people across multiple states. He'd been featured in Forbes, invited to speak at conferences, asked for advice by people who used to ignore him. But none of that mattered as much as the other numbers. 83 kids had gone through his mentorship program in the past year. 42 families had been helped by the Employee Hardship Fund. Trevor's business had hired 6 people, all from disadvantaged backgrounds. Marcus Webb's scholarship had grown to support 100 students annually. Emma was thriving. Good grades, good friends, good kid. Mrs. Chen was healthy and happy in her guest house, cooking for them and spoiling bones rotten. Rachel had just been promoted to senior vice president. Patricia had come out of retirement to help train new mentors. And Daniel had learned something that seemed obvious in retrospect, but had taken him years to really understand. Success wasn't about proving the bullies wrong. It was about proving yourself right, about becoming the person you needed when you were at your lowest. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Mr. Carter, this is Trevor. Just wanted to let you know we got the contract for the new community center project. 300 jobs, all going to local workers. Couldn't have done it without what you taught me. Thank you." Daniel smiled and saved the number, added it to his contacts under Trevor, success story. Though really, Daniel thought, they were all success stories. Everyone who'd been given a chance and taken it. Everyone who'd chosen to try instead of quit. Everyone who'd helped someone else climb up behind them. That was the real measure of success. Not the title or the money or the recognition, but the chain reaction of hope you started when you reached back to pull someone else forward. Emma texted, "Done with homework. Can we watch a movie tonight? The one with the dragon." "Sure, Bug. I'll be home in an hour." Daniel packed up his desk, turned off his office lights, and headed for the elevator. Tomorrow he'd come back and be the CEO, make big decisions, lead meetings, shape strategy. But tonight, he was just Emma's dad, and that was the role he was most proud of. Walking out of the building into the evening air, Daniel thought about that version of himself standing in Marcus Webb's trap 4 years ago. The guy who'd almost walked out, almost given up, almost let fear win. He wished he could go back and tell that guy it was all going to be okay. Better than okay. But maybe that guy already knew. Maybe showing up at all had been the first step toward believing he deserved better. Daniel drove home through familiar streets, past the old apartment building where he and Emma had lived in that cramped one-bedroom, past Martinez Auto Repair where Carlos still worked and still texted Daniel occasionally to say he was proud, past Riverside High where new kids were figuring out who they wanted to become. The house was lit up when he pulled into the driveway. He could see Emma through the window, dancing with Bones. Mrs. Chen in the kitchen, probably making tea. His family, his home, his life. It wasn't perfect. It was messy and complicated and full of challenges he still didn't always know how to handle. But it was his, built from nothing but showing up and trying and refusing to let other people's opinions determine his worth. And that, Daniel thought as he walked through his front door to the sound of Emma's laughter, was the greatest success of all.